every apologist needs a church, and every church needs an apologist. And what I mean by that is that if the church is committed to evangelism, if the church is committed to the Great Commission, spreading the gospel, then when we go out to the community, when we go out to our neighborhoods, we're going to get hit with questions. We need to know how to answer those questions. I'm a firm believer that whenever people ask questions about the gospel and we don't give them an answer, they assume it's because there is no answer.
Well, thank you for watching another episode of the Jude 3 Project podcast. As always, I'm your host, Lisa Fields, the founder of the Jude 3 Project. And today, I'm glad to have my friend, Pastor Chris Brooks, joining us. Welcome, Pastor Brooks.
Man, this is big time. I'm so happy to be with you. So grateful for you, Lisa. I know I joined the choir of people who just celebrate what God has done in and through the Jude 3 Project over these last several years. And man, just to see how much it's grown and the impact has been tremendous. So I'm happy to be here.
Yes, and thank you so much for your generosity. Y'all have let us use your studio up there in Troy, Michigan, and been great partners with us over the years. So I'm very appreciative to you and your church for coming alongside us in this journey. And you've let me talk about Jude 3 several times on your radio show. For those who don't know who you are, just tell our audience a little bit about who you are.
Yeah, I jokingly say I'm just a hardworking pastor in Detroit. I get a chance to do ministry in a city that birthed me, and I love. I was born in Detroit, baptized in Detroit, married in Detroit, had my kids in Detroit, and if God is good to me, I'll die in Detroit. I mean, I love this city, and I get a chance to do ministry here. So I'm a pastor. As you alluded to, I also get a chance to do a radio broadcast, national program through Moody. So big shout out to Moody Radio, my Moody Radio family. And it's called Equipped with Chris Brooks. And we like to live at the intersection of faith and culture. If people are talking about topics across the dinner table, at the water cooler, on social media, we want to talk about those things through a Christ-centered lens. I'm also a husband and a father. I get a chance to be married to my Ethiopian queen, Yodi. We've been married for going on 28 years, 27 to be exact, going on 28 years, the best 28 years of her life. And so I'm just joking. It's been the best 28 years of mine, too. But we got a wonderful marriage, and I'm grateful for her. And then we have 6 kids, 1 in heaven, 5 at home, and grateful for our kids. Life is never boring when you got that big of a house. And so super grateful. And I'm also a writer. I got a chance to write a couple of books, Urban Apologetics, Kingdom Dreaming, and I love being able to write and blog and do everything we can to encourage people to live, share, and defend their faith.
Yeah, and I have to acknowledge the fact that before there was a Jude 3 Project, you wrote Urban Apologetics. So you were the first person I knew that had that was an African American that had an apologetics book and a resource that was really helpful for me. And so you paved the way for people like me and other apologists. So we thank you for paving the way for us.
I'm grateful just at how this has grown.
Mm-hmm.
When I first in 2014 was invited to write the book Urban Apologetics, at the time, I was hoping that just like systematic theology or church history, it would turn into an entire field of study, because I think that it merits that. And as you have proven, there are so many great urban thinkers, and both now and historically. And so to be able to tell their stories, put that on display, being able to share with the world how we're thinking about theology, how we're thinking about life, how we're thinking about navigating faith and culture. Man, it's a joy to see what God has done.
Yes. So we're going to be talking about apologetics in the church. You're passionate. Apologetics is a passion for you. And you are also a senior pastor. And so you've had to weave both of these things together in your ministry. Um, why is apologetics so important and crucial for the church?
Yeah, I when I wrote that book, Urban Apologetics, one of my favorite chapters, probably my favorite chapter, is apologetics in the local church,
Mm-hmm.
and in it I say the statement: every apologist needs a church, and every church needs an apologist. And what I mean by that is that if the church is committed to evangelism, if the church is committed to the Great Commission, spreading the gospel, then when we go out to the community, when we go out to our neighborhoods, we're going to get hit with
Mm-hmm.
questions. And we need to know how to answer those questions. I'm a firm believer that whenever people ask questions about the gospel and we don't give them an answer, they assume it's because there is no answer.
Mm-hmm.
Now the reality is that the gospel is not deficient. The
Mm-hmm.
gospel can answer any question, but a lot of times we're anemic in our ability to be able to answer the questions of the heart and the head. And so for me, if the church is going to be the church, it kind of goes back to this, Lisa, for us is what does it mean to be a church, right? What separates the church from just a gathering of people or a social group? I think there's classically four things that separate the church, that makes the church a church.
Mm-hmm.
One is the preaching of the gospel.
Mm-hmm.
You got to preach the gospel. Two is the right administration of the ordinances. So that's baptism and communion. Three is elders having spiritual leadership. But then number four is living on mission together. And if you are in a place that's not living on mission, it might be a lot of things, but it ain't a church.
Mm-hmm.
And if you're in a place that is living on mission, then you understand exactly why apologetics is important. At my church, probably around 2008, Lisa, we made a decision that, man, we're going to dedicate this summer to going to 1,500 homes in our community. We wanted to just go door to door and just see how we could pray for them, see if God will open up doors for the gospel. And so we kind of mobilized, mapped out our neighborhoods, and start going out. And man, God bless that, allow a lot of fruitful conversations to come out of that. But man, as a young pastor at that time, people were coming back to me, members of my church, with, man, what's a 5%er?
Mm-hmm.
How do I answer this person's question about did Jesus really resurrect from the dead, and how do you believe in miracles? And how do I respond to the Mormons that's going door to door as well, and the Jehovah's Witnesses? And the next thing I know, I was thinking to myself, like, man, there needs to be somebody that's answering these questions. Little did I know at the time, there was a whole field of somebodies called apologists who have dedicated their lives to answering questions that people have about the gospel. So that's why it's so important, because the scriptures command us to spread the gospel. And when you do, you're going to encounter questions, and you need to know how to respond to those.
Yes, I love that you talk about that, because so important and so vital to for the churches to consider the questions people are asking. And just because you didn't get an answer there doesn't mean there's no answer. I was talking to a person who re- recently converted to atheism, and they said that they went to their pastor with questions and he couldn't answer any of them.
Yeah.
And that's what led him to think that there were no answers. And I think it's
Mm.
important to make that note. Like, just because you didn't receive the answer you were looking for, that doesn't mean the answer doesn't exist. Um,
Yeah, I think as pastors too, we got to be humble enough to say to our church what you just said. Hey, I'm going to, as your pastor, as a leadership team, we're going to try our best to answer the questions that are on your heart. But please know, if there's ever a question you bring to us that we can't adequately answer, that there is an answer out there. Don't let us hinder your faith.
mhm.
But honestly, it's the questions of the people that I get a chance to shepherd in the community I'm trying to reach that drive me to deeper study and commitment.
For those who are listening and thinking about apologetics, the old school apologetics, uh, versus what's it evolved into. In a lot of different cases. Now, in some groups it hasn't evolved at all, but then there's some. people like me and Jude 3 and others who kind of press the envelope of what traditional apologetics uh, leans into. How do you see the apologetics evolving in the church context?
Yeah, so I guess one way of saying it is from the classroom to the corner,
Mm-hmm.
right? So I think that classic apologetics, it looks more academic.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it was originally in seminaries, Bible colleges, where you take a course or maybe two that dealt with questions like, are miracles possible?
Mm-hmm.
Questions like, how does Christianity relate to other religions? Jesus among the other
Mm-hmm.
gods, right? If you will. So a lot of it felt academic. It felt like specialization stuff. But if you go back all the way to Scripture, the classic verses you know is 1 Peter 3:15, and it's there where Peter rather, commands us to be ready
Mm-hmm.
to give a defense for the reason for the hope that lies in us.
Mm-hmm.
You know, Peter anticipates that people are going to be like, "Man, why are you so hopeful?"
Mm-hmm.
And we need to be able to tell them why, in a fallen world, in the face of a fallen world, we maintain hope.
Mm-hmm.
But unfortunately, again, a lot of that stuff was only for people who could get into seminaries, afford seminaries, and had a mind for reading these deep academic books. I think fast forwarding it, God has used a number of people, people like you and others,
Mm-hmm.
to make it a lot more accessible
Mm-hmm.
so that everyone could have access to it. I think it's changed in two major ways. Number one, I think it's changed in who believes they could be an apologist or do apologetics. It used to be, again, professors, maybe pastors, but specialists were the ones that we looked to do apologetics. Now, I think rightfully so, we've communicated to every believer has the responsibility of sharing the gospel and being prepared to give a defense. As a matter of fact, that's what Peter wanted.
Mm-hmm.
When he writes about the priesthood of all believers in 1 Peter 2:9, this is what he's looking at. But the second way I think it's changed is, as you know, in the questions that are being asked. You know, so it used to be that the questions were all or mostly evidential
Mm-hmm.
questions. You know, is the New Testament reliable?
Mm-hmm.
Has the scriptures been tampered with?
Mm-hmm.
You know, that type of stuff. Does archaeology support the findings of the Bible, or is there discontinuity there? But now, fast forward, most of the questions aren't as much evidential as they are ethical. You know, is God good? Is Christianity good for the world, for the community? Is Christianity racist or sexist
Mm-hmm.
or oppressive?
Mm-hmm.
You know, we got to be able to answer those. What does Christianity have to say for the abused? What does Christianity have to say to the neglected, the marginalized, the overlooked? I think these are the questions that people are asking now more than ever. Is God good versus is God true or real?
Mm-hmm.
It's almost, an entire shift.
Mm-hmm. No, I think that is important for people to know. And you brought up First Peter 3:15, and the hope portion, the hope that we have, and
Yeah,
that's really been sitting with me. In particular, we're having a big event at FAMU at the end of the month to jump starting our HBCU tour that we
that's great.
and so we're excited. And I was really so encouraged. One of the students said, "Lisa, I just want you to know I've been praying for Jude 3 to come to our campus." He was like,
That's so.
"I was about to lose my faith. My professors were challenging me early." He's a senior now, and he said, "I heard your story, and it inspired me. Like I don't have to fold." And he was like, "I got a hold to the resources, and they helped me." So that was super encouraging. But when I
That's
was
right.
saying, what is the climate on your campus? And he said, everybody's depressed.
Mm.
He
Yeah, that's
said,
right.
and I was like, wow. He was like, we're just like the anxiety and all of that. And it just has made me think really through hope, letting people see the
Good.
hope that is in Christ, that which is very incarnational. It's very demonstration based. It's not just about like giving these arguments, but showing the next generation that we have a hope, and that hope gives us joy. It gives us peace. Um, just kind of speaking to that hope piece in apologetics for a generation. Kind of,
Yeah.
can you lean into that for us a little bit?
Yeah, and I was just about to say, isn't it interesting that the same thing you're picking up on is the same thing that Peter is identifying, and it just is a reminder to us that certain things were always meant to be the distinctives
Mm-hmm.
of the Christian faith. And I think it's easy for us to think that what makes us different than everybody else is the tenets of our theology,
Mm-hmm.
right? And certainly we do have a unique theology, different than Islam, different than Hinduism or Buddhism or Middle Eastern religions or
Mm-hmm.
whatever. But I do also think that it's really important that we remember that our disposition was what always caused people to say there's something different about these
Mm-hmm.
people, right? So for Peter's day, it was the diaspora. He's writing to the tribes that have been scattered throughout the lands, and believers in Christ who are on the run and don't have place and don't have power and don't have political voice. How do we maintain hope?
Mm-hmm.
You fast forward even to the civil rights movement. Man, how do you maintain hope in the face of oppression, mistreatment, marginalization?
Mm-hmm.
And you fast forward to our day, and there's anxiety and stress
Mm-hmm.
and depression. And it's like, how do you maintain hope?
Mm-hmm.
Even to this day, Lisa, a big part of my ministry is engaging on university campuses.
Mm-hmm.
Our team and I try to at least twice a month to make sure that we are on some campus to answer questions. We typically do these kind of stump the pastor events
Mm-hmm.
so that people can bring their questions and stuff. And 100%, this is the most anxious generation I have ever seen.
Mm-hmm.
And yet it goes back to the same thing Peter talked about. How do we find hope in the midst of all of this? And the thing about the hope of Christ is that it's not a shallow hope.
Mm-hmm.
It's not a hope that's simply based off of external circumstances. It's a deep, sustaining hope that allows you to have emotional, spiritual, mental well being
Mm-hmm.
in spite of the storms and the chaos of the world around you.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the difference between being a believer and not.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's not that an atheist doesn't occasionally have hope, is that for the atheist, hope is on the fringes. For the believer, hope is at the core.
Mm-hmm.
It's at the core of who we are. Yeah, discouragement certainly lives at the fringes, but the core of who we are is a people of hope. And I just say one final thing. That's true even for people who are living with clinical depression. Like, let's not minimize the fact that some people they deal with this like as a part of their day to day life. But the fact that you keep getting up again,
Mm-hmm.
the fact that what your faith does for you is allows you to survive those dark nights of the soul and say, but I'm going to hold on. Like my grandmother used to say, are you holding on? Yeah, I'm able to hold on because Jesus is holding on to me.
Yeah. Yeah. One of the major objections, I think, across the board as we think about leaning into this hope, and I know I'm going a little bit off script, but is kind of the problem of suffering. I think that tanks
Yeah,
people's hope. And so that was the second thing that the student brought to me. They were like, one of the challenges that he sees on campus, and the other student, she was telling me as well, is that students are having a very difficult time when things don't go the way they anticipated.
yeah, yeah,
There's no kind of ability to pivot. Everything is kind of, all their hope is built on this one thing. And then when things, because we live in a fallen world, things are not going to go well. You're still going to have tragedy. There's still going to be hard times. And
yeah,
they haven't been able to like push through. And some could say some blame the parenting, like, overprotecting kids
yeah.
from hardships to they're not able to maneuver in real life. Um, how have you helped people navigate that yourself?
Yeah, let me just say this about parenting. As a parent, I think every generation of parents protect their kids to the level they can,
Hmm.
right? Like we try to make it seem like generations ago we're hardcore and we're soft. My mama didn't put a seatbelt on me because they didn't have seatbelts.
Hmm.
It wasn't like they had opportunity to do it and they just didn't,
Hmm.
right? Mamas have always been mamas.
Hmm.
You know, the reality is that I was talking to a mother at our church recently and she said, I don't even like when the wind blow hard on my kids. You know, and she was older, you
Hmm.
know. I think that parents always want to protect their kids. It's just who we are. God's wired us that way. But yet life is going to bring hardship. You know, I shared with you before we got started in 2019, we experienced the most devastating thing I think any parent can experience, and that is the death of our oldest son, Chris. And it rocked us to the core. But the one thing that I've come to realize on that journey of grief and sorrow, and it is a journey, is that switching worldviews does not relieve the problem. I still have to answer the question, what do I do with this,
Hmm.
right? Now, I love what C.S. Lewis says about this. He says, I believe in Christ for the same reason I believe in the sun, not just because I can see it, but because of it, I can see everything else.
Hmm.
So C.S. Lewis said the same way the sun in the sky illuminates everything else is the same way Jesus makes sense of all of life, both celebration and suffering. So I had to process through, what do I do with the death of my son? Now imagine trying to process through that as an atheist. Life has no meaning, no purpose. We're molecules in motion.
Hmm.
Everything is random, chance. Man, that leads me to nihilism, hopelessness, despair. It doesn't provide any relief.
Hmm.
But as a Christian, the Bible is the realest book I know.
Hmm.
And it helps me to understand how the world was made,
Hmm.
how we got into the problem that we're in, how to redeem it, and what's ultimately the promise.
Hmm.
I got a promise that I'm going to be reunited with my son again. I understand why we got here because of rebellion against God. I understand how redemption comes through Jesus Christ and faith and relationship with Him. And so I think the Christian faith does a better job providing you and I with resources to answer the problem of pain
Hmm.
and suffering. Now, with that being said, yeah, I think that we do need to build resilient kids. I think we need to have more resiliency in our lives.
Hmm.
But the way we do that is by looking to the resources that God has given us to survive the difficulties, not to hide out from them.
Hmm. No, that's really helpful, and thank you for sharing that. Uh, because I know grief is hard, and so, but I do know that those who have shared, um, about their pain when they hear the pain of others, they connect well. That's so much
Yeah,
of what we're seeing with this next generation. They want to know that you have skin in the game before they listen to you.
yeah, that's right. Yeah, that's
I've noticed that they're like, we interview a group of guys, teenage boys. I don't know if you saw this, but and we were just uncut situations, and they were going through so much because
mm,
they were like in a special group, and that many of them were battling homelessness, and they were
wow.
just like, coming to school hungry, and they've seen so much more than I could even imagine,
Mm,
and they were just like, I want a leader that knows what I'm experiencing, which is like Jesus.
wow.
Um,
Yeah, yeah,
yeah, they were like, kids church feels uh, kind of disconnected from their experience. And so they're
yeah.
like, I actually want to sit in what they call big church because it actually is dealing with the complexity of my life and not just fun and games.
And when you think about it, you know, you got those who have lived through that stuff. But even those who haven't lived through it, I mean, kids are getting cell phones at the average age of 8 now.
Hmm.
So your 8-year old is being exposed to, man, what's going on around the globe,
Hmm.
the sins of their favorite celebrity or athlete. They're being introduced to the brokenness of the world. My kids come to me all the time telling me about stories of craziness. And Dad, how do I, process through all of this? So even those who maybe haven't experienced some of
Mm-hmm.
those hardships,
Mm-hmm.
they're certainly not sheltered anymore. So I think the whole concept, I know this is a little bit different than what we were going to talk about, but I know the whole concept of big church, kids church, man, those lines are being quickly removed, and the local church has to be able to recognize that and not think that we're doing ministry in the 90s anymore.
Yeah. I love that you said that because that's one of my heels that I die on
Yeah.
about how do we reach the next generation. And I think I've said this on your program before. If high schoolers especially can learn geometry and calculus, uh,
Yeah.
and algebra, I'm sure they can learn the basic tenets of the faith, and it doesn't have to be watered down for them. Because that's how they're gonna be able to stand when they go off to school and just in life. Period.
Yeah, I mean, my mom used to tell me if you can remember the lyrics to those songs, you can remember some Bible verses, So we don't got no excuse, and I think that Odyssey Church needs to be the realest place that our kids go, and hopefully we're building churches for our sons and daughters. I tell my team all the time, if we're thinking about 2025, we're already dying. We got to think about 2030 and beyond. We have to think about the next generation. And our church has been a huge blessing to me, to our generation. But I want it to be my kids' church.
Mm-hmm.
I want my children, the grandchildren of some of my members to be able to say, man, that's my church as well.
Mm-hmm. As we think about hope, I feel like this is shifted to another conversation, but I think we prayed before we started, so I feel like maybe God is leading us into a different conversation. But I think about this climate, and every day on the news, there's something different.
Yeah. Yeah.
From planes falling out the sky to what's going on with the president, to bird flu in the chicken.
Yeah.
There's an overwhelming sense of anxiety amongst everyone. And I'm in DC. So a number of my friends are losing their job or concerned about their job. Like
Yeah.
there's so much angst.
Yeah.
Um, what, how do you think we need to be thinking in this day where
Yeah.
everything is sinking sand? um,
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, so I think that two ways that I've come to think about this, just in care for my own soul, Lisa.
Mm-hmm.
Number one is to embrace the beauty of limits.
Mm-hmm.
From the garden to now, God has placed beautiful limitations on humanity.
Mm-hmm.
In the garden, He says, hey, you can enjoy all these trees of the garden, just don't eat from this tree of the knowledge of good and evil. Why do we need those restrictions? It's because we're not God. Classically, there are three attributes that make God God: omniscience, omnipotence, and omnipresence. Omniscience means He knows everything, omnipotence means He's all powerful, and omnipresence means He's everywhere and throughout all time. I'm not those things. That means that I'm finite, right? And I think that the problem with these phones of ours is that they make us feel like deity
Mm-hmm.
when we're not supposed to,
Mm-hmm.
right? And so the problem is overexposure. And I haven't factored in my lack of capacity. Because I'm not God, I'm not built to know about all the evil that's happening through all the world. One of the things that I needed to do a few years ago was to cut off my notifications. So I cut off just about all of my notifications. The only time I get a notification is if there's like a text or an email that's coming through. But I used to have on, man, every news feed, ESPN, all of these different apps. And so I knew when the stock market wasn't doing bad. I knew when my favorite athletes were doing dumb things. I knew when stuff was going down in Europe or Africa. And you come to the end of the day and you ask yourself, man, am I even built to know about all those things.
Mm.
You know, in previous generations, they didn't have access to all of that stuff. You knew what was going on in your community. Maybe in time you knew beyond a little bit of that, but you didn't know what was going on all around the world at any given moment. And so I think that we are surpassing our capacity as finite beings. We're trying to live as if we are infinite beings, and we're not, and it's crushing us. Only God can handle knowing all the evil in all the world and still maintain hope, because he is omniscient, he is omnipotent, he is omnipresent. I'm not, so I need to embrace joyful limits. So that means a Sabbath for me. That means limiting the amount of intake of screens. That means limiting social media time. So the more I lean in the limits, the healthier that I find myself becoming. But the other thing I'll just simply say is the more that we see the world going out of control, the more it should excite us that Jesus' return is drawing near. Because if you read Matthew 24 and 25, it tells us some of the signs that will be present before he returns. And all this stuff that we're seeing play out are the things that he said. And why do we have, Lisa, biblical prophecy? He gives us prophecy. In other words, he tells us what's going to happen before it happens, so that when it happens, we can still have hope. He tells us in advance, hey, there's going to be wars. There's going to be rumors of wars. There's going to be betrayal. Brother will rise against brother. Leaders will forget. Love will be lost. All of these things, men will be lovers of money rather than lovers of God. Now, why did he tell us all that? So that when it goes down, we can remember, oh, that's right. God told us this was going to happen. And we don't have to panic, right? If I tell my kids, hey, I'm about to go away to work today, but just know that before the day is over, these three things are going to happen. When those things happen, they're not going to be thrown off. They're going to say, that's what Dad told us was going to happen. Mm-hmm. So I think that the more we stay in the Word, so it's not like we cut ourselves off from all this information in a vacuum. We replace it with time in the Word, and the more we stay in the Word, the more we're aware of what he told us was going to happen before it happens, so that as it goes down, and it don't stress you. It's going to disappoint some people, but I'm going to tell you, I ain't following every day what the president is doing. And I sleep well. Because I know, here's the thing, I know that so much of it is anxiety producing. So much of it is designed to stress you out, right? Mm-hmm. Now, I'm very much in tune with laws, policies, things that affect my local community, the people I'm pastoring, the folks I'm trying to reach with the gospel. So I'm not like championing ignorance, but in the same way, I ain't gonna stay up all night trying to keep up with everything any politician is trying to do. I try to limit what I take in for the health of my own soul, because I can't handle knowing all of it. It'll overwhelm me, being exposed to all the evil of the world.
Mm-hmm. No, I think that's some helpful points that people could take in, that you have to, if you're going to function. I talked about this recently. I got off social media really for the most part of January, because I was like, I'm not going to be able to write my book. Like I got a manuscript deadline, and if I'm like overexposed, it's gonna like suck my energy, my creativity, my ability to write, and so I cannot be scrolling, because it becomes an addiction that you don't even realize. Like I gotta cut that off in order to, and I think that's similar to what you're communicating. If you want to function in life, you cannot consume every bit of content. It just it's debilitating.
You watch Jude 3, go to sleep.
Well, thank you, Pastor Brooks. How can people get in contact with you on social media?
Yeah, so I'm at Pastor Chris Brooks on social media platforms. You can just find me there. I also would love to invite, if you're in the Metro Detroit area, Woodside Bible Church, you can come check us out. As always, on YouTube, you can check out our services, Woodside Bible Church as well there. And man, would love to be able to connect. And also for the radio program, equippedradio.org, equippedradio.org.
Well, thank you, Pastor Brooks, for joining us. You have watched another episode of the Jude 3 Project podcast. Remember, you can get my book, When Faith Disappoints, wherever books are sold. Remember to support the Jude 3 Project by hitting that donate tab. There's a address to give by mail, or you could give online. If you want to listen to all of our podcasts, you could stream it wherever you listen to your favorite podcast, or watch it on our YouTube channel. Remember, here at the Jude 3 Project, we're helping you to know what you believe and why. Until next time, grace and peace, and God bless.